The fourth. Please put off your mic if you're not speaking. The only people who should be speaking are the hosts and our guest speakers for today. Good day, global citizens. Good day, everyone. Welcome to the inaugural virtual workshop for the Research Reporters program under Fajembola Inertia for Science and Technology. I won't speak too much on what the program is about because there is a specific time allocated time for that. But we'll dive directly into our first session for today, which is from Anthony Pola-Yost. Coincidentally, I met Anthony Pola-Yost recently, and God so have it that it destined she will be one of the speakers for today, and I'm so glad she's the one to take that position and share her expertise on the role global citizens play in health advocacy. When we talk about health advocacy, many people see it as it's the role of just the clinicians. If you are not in the field of health, you have no business with health advocacy. But where we are today globally, health advocacy is the job of everyone, every adult, every individual, because every individual has the right to health. So let me give you the profile of our first speaker for today, Attorney Pola-Yost. Few professionals bridge the worlds of the law and mental health with the depth and passion of Anthony Pola-Yost. She's a seasoned attorney and licensed mental health clinician. Paula brings a multi-dimensional perspective that blends legal precision with human compassion. Paula has built a distinguished career in trademark law. Beyond her core legal work, she's deeply committed to what she calls legal social work, advocating for individuals at the intersection of law and mental health. As a mother of children with medical challenges and a survivor of the life-threatening pre-eclampsia, Paula is on a mission to help families advocate for their children and themselves through storytelling, education, and unapologetic truth. So thank you so much, Attorney Pola-Yost, for joining us on this inaugural workshop for the Research Reporters program. Please do me the honor, everyone, do me the honor of welcoming our first speaker, Anthony Pola-Yost. Paula, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I'm so happy to be here today. I just want to tell all of you that I am looking at the chat. So if someone has a question, I'll be more than happy to stop what I'm talking about and to be able to answer any questions that you guys have. So, Dr. Aziz said, I am an attorney. I'm also a licensed clinical mental health therapist. But I'm not going to talk to you guys about boring laws or things like that today. I'm going to share with you my personal experiences and the way that physicians helped me and the way that physicians hurt me and the things that I needed to do in order to be an advocate for myself. For me, advocacy came as a very natural thing because I have been professionally trained as an attorney. But for many of the mothers and clients that you all are going to interface with, that is not going to be the case. And so I want to help you feel empowered to help people in clinical health situations be able to get their needs met. So, the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is my second child. And the reason for that is that because when I was pregnant with my second child, I almost died. So here's the story. So I was 26 weeks pregnant. So I was not even showing. I did not have a baby bump really at that time. Still in my second trimester. And I knew that I was feeling not great. I was swelling a lot in my lower extremities, like my feet and my hands, but I was pregnant and I had been pregnant before. And I swelled a lot at the end of that pregnancy. And it never occurred to me that I was swelling too soon. Like the concept that it was too early in the pregnancy for that symptom to be emerging, I didn't register that as a problem. The other thing that I had going on was I was very tired and fatigued, but again, I was pregnant. Pregnant women are tired. I also had been to the bathroom a lot. I had had some digestive issues, but I thought that was because my 2-year-old had had a virus, and I thought I just had a virus from him. So essentially, I was like a glowing red light of preeclampsia symptoms: premature swelling, fatigue, diarrhea, nausea. But I didn't know any of that. I just thought I was pregnant and that those were all normal for a pregnant woman. So everything escalated in a bad way very, very quickly. So essentially, on New Year's Eve in 2015, I was putting my 2-year-old to bed and I walked out of his room and I felt like someone had taken their hand and grabbed the base of my brain and squeezed it. And I literally felt like electrical current rotating through my brain. I couldn't see for a few seconds. Like I was literally blind and I saw stars. And I walked out of my child's room, and my husband, and 5 stars to my husband. My husband is a licensed nurse anesthetist, so he's an anesthesia nurse. So I walked out, and my husband was like, "Whoa, you don't look good." And I told my husband what had happened, and he was like, "We're going to go to the hospital." And I was like, "Well, I mean, I feel better now. Like, I'm just going to take some Tylenol and I'm going to go to bed." And he was like, "No, no, 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 we're not. We are going to the hospital." So he called my mother to come stay with our 2-year-old, and he took me to the hospital. I didn't go in an ambulance or anything like that, but he took me to the hospital. I got into the hospital and my blood pressure, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I do know that the top number was in the 190s and the bottom number was well above what was healthy at that point. And so the next thing I knew, I was surrounded by medical professionals, and they kept talking to me about there being protein in my urine, which meant nothing to me. So, as a non-medical professional, I think the things I like to talk about with this is not to toot my own horn, but I am a highly educated woman. Like, I have 4 college degrees, I hold 5 professional licenses. I was literally dying, and I had no idea that I was dying. We don't need for women, like, we spend a lot of time, at least in the United States, we spend a tremendous amount of time telling women how to not get pregnant. But we don't provide education for women on how to get pregnant when they want to and it's not working well. We also don't provide women with education on what happens when something like preeclampsia is occurring. I had no education. I had heard of preeclampsia, but I didn't know what it was. And it never occurred to me that it was something that could happen to me. So I'm in the hospital not having any idea what's going on. My husband actually knows exactly what's going on, but my husband looks completely calm. Like he is like, there's a major crisis going on with me, but my husband looks like he's totally fine. So I'm aggravated with him because I'm like, well, am I sick or not? Like, I don't want to be in the hospital. Being in the hospital sucks. Like, I want to go home. Like, why am I here? And my husband was like, no, 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 no. You need to stay here. We need to give you some medicine, and then people started saying things to me like, you might have a baby this weekend. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm not even in my third trimester. I'm not showing. Is my baby going to live? Like, I don't want to lose this baby. Like, I want this baby. So I am freaking out while my blood pressure is already high and I have no idea what's going on. And I'm probably honestly not fully in my right mind anyway, because let's remember that my blood pressure is in the 190s. So that's not a good place to be anyway with a person's cognitive processing, no matter how smart they are. So finally, a doctor comes in. And I think that this doctor is irritated because it is New Year's Eve. And I'm sure he was probably at a party when he got called in that, there was a woman in his practice that was in the hospital with an emergency. And he walked in, and I had basic questions. What's wrong with me? Is my baby going to be okay? What's going to happen to me? I don't know anything. And he looks at me and says, well, right now you need to just stay in the hospital because you're just an incubator right now. That is probably not something that you should say to a woman. No mother wants to hear, even if it is clinically and scientifically true, that's not a good thing to say to a woman because no woman is just an incubator. We are daughters, we are wives, we are whatever our profession is. And let us also add that I had a 2-year-old at home. So I didn't want to leave my 2-year-old at home while they were talking to me about you could be in the hospital until you deliver this baby. Like you could be here for 13 weeks. And I'm going, I can't be away from my toddler for 13 weeks. What? And again, no one's educating me. So, one of the things I want to make clear in a situation like that, it's very, very important that you are able to educate your patients with honest information about what they are facing, no matter what it is, and no matter how hard it is to tell them. People deserve dignity and they deserve the truth to the best of your knowledge. And I felt that I was not given that dignity. In fact, I was, in fact, stripped of my dignity in a way by being told, you're basically just your woman parts today. So essentially, I kicked everyone out of the hospital room. They started me on a magnesium sulfate drip, which to this day is the most horrible physical thing I've ever done in my life. It's called the mag drip, and being on it made me feel terrible. And again, no one was really explaining to me why I was on it or what it was supposed to do. I was hooked up to all kinds of stuff. I lost the ability to stand on my own because the magnesium sulfate drip messes with your joints and it makes it so you can't really feel. It's like it almost makes you feel like you have neuropathy. It was not a good situation. So finally, I'd been in the hospital for 2 days and a neonatologist came in to see me. And he came in and he introduced himself. He said, hi, Paula, I'm Dr. Payne. And he was like, and I'm here to talk to you about any questions that you have. And the very first thing that I said to him was, is this my fault? Because honestly, in those 2 days, that was the thing that sat on me the most. What did I do I mean, it's making me emotional now, and this was 10 years ago. But I was like, what did I do that caused me to be in here? Like, this was a wanted pregnancy. This was a planned pregnancy. I had done everything right. Like, what did I do? And Dr. Payne said, you did not do anything wrong. Like, preeclampsia is the mystery of obstetrics. It can happen to anyone. It happens to 22-year-old marathon runners. Like, you did not cause this. We don't know what caused this. We're just here to take care of you. And then I started asking questions like, okay, so people are saying I might have a baby this weekend. What happens if I do? What happens to my baby? And he said, well, your baby is going to have a very long stay in a NICU. And instead of growing in your belly, he's going to grow in a box called an isolette. But he has a 95% chance of survival if we can get you to the 27-week mark, which was like Monday. And this was Saturday. He was like, so if you can lay in this bed and stay calm and not have your blood pressure go crazy for 2 more days, you can probably have a baby with a 95% chance of survival. It's just going to be a long time in the NICU. And I was like, okay, as long as my baby lives, I can do this. I can do this. And so Dr. Payne was the first person that I met who gave me peace. And the peace that he gave me was not only a peace that he gave me during that day in that hospital stay, it was a peace that has lasted me to this day because he told me the truth, which was what happened to Pearson was not what happened to me and to Pearson was not my fault. And many mothers carry beliefs when something goes wrong with their pregnancy or with their child. They carry the belief that it is their fault, even if that is completely irrational. So, you as medical professionals will be someone's hero if you can give them the reassurance that this was not their fault. So, long story short, I was able to stay in the hospital for 2 more days. And then the following Monday, I woke up around 5, 6 a.m. and all of the problems that I'd had originally were back. Screaming headache. I was seeing spots. And I checked my blood pressure because they had a blood pressure cuff beside my bed and it was really high again. So I immediately hit the call button. My nurse came in and I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but my blood pressure's crazy again. And she said, okay. So a few minutes later, and I mean fast, like within 10 minutes, a different gynecologist came in the room, Dr. Jones, who was great. And I could see like multiple of him in front of me, like literally, like there were like three Dr. Joneses in front of me. And he said, Paula, we're going to go have a baby. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, are me and the baby going to be okay? He was like, 95% chance you and the baby are going to be okay. I just need you to stay calm. We're going to take you into labor and delivery. I was like, all right. Well, in the meantime, my husband's been called. So he's like speeding down the road to get to the hospital for, the birth of our baby. And they take me into labor and delivery. And this was also a very much a test of my modesty because I think there were probably 50 people in that labor and delivery room. Usually in labor and delivery, there's a small number of people in the room because you don't need a whole bunch of people in there for a baby, right? But because this was a life and death situation and the baby was going to have to go to a neonatology unit. There were doctors and nurses in there for the baby. There were respiratory therapists in there for the baby. There were doctors and nurses in there for me. There was a whole anesthesia team. I'm not kidding when I tell you there were like 50 people in this room. There were a lot of people in there. So I'm laying in there with, all of my parts exposed. I think my uterus was on a table, which is not fun. And all of a sudden, my husband's boss, because remember, my husband's an anesthesia nurse. So my husband's boss, who I've only met at social gatherings, walks up to me, pats me on the shoulder, and goes, Paula, you're doing great. And then walks away. And my husband goes, I look at my husband, I go, was that your boss? And he goes, yeah, honey, everyone's in here. We're all trying to take the best care of you. And I see Ozzy's out laughing, and I'm like, oh, like I understand that in theory they were all trying to take care of me, and they were doing a great job. In fairness to them, and I know that to them this was just another day at work, but to me this was humiliating because I'm laying there with my whole self exposed in front of my husband's boss. And so, again, just kind of be mindful that what might be another day in your life might be absolutely humiliating to your patient who's never been in this situation before. So, long story short, to kind of cap the Pearson story, Pearson was born. He weighed 1 pound and 14 ounces. He cried. I heard something that sounded like a kitten's meow, which was him crying. And then they whisked him away, and I didn't see him. So my husband did show me a picture, and about 5 hours later, after they had sewn me up and I had been in compression leggings for a while, somebody wheeled me down to the NICU, and I got to see my baby for the first time. But I didn't get to touch him. His skin was very delicate, and all I could do was sit there and look at him in a box. And that is traumatic for a mother. I had been through a lot of birth trauma. My blood pressure had been very high. I was very scared. And, this little baby who had been in my belly earlier that morning and who had been in my belly happily for 27 weeks is now hooked up to all kinds of things in a box. So we had a really long stay in the NICU. And when Pearson came home, he was on a heart monitor for a little while. But right now, he's 10 years old. He is a fourth grader. He reads on a 10th grade level. He is completely developmentally on target physically in every area. And if you met him, you would have absolutely no idea we had been through any of that. So I guess my takeaways from that are if you have a mother with a special needs child, remind her that this is not her fault, that she didn't do anything to cause these problems. Marvel of medicine, whatever statistics you can tell her, you will be her best friend. She will love you forever if you give her some peace with that. Number two, be mindful of the things that you say to your patients because saying something like, you're just an incubator right now, well, that might be true, but that's not helpful. So try to make sure that the things that you say are going to be emotionally and psychologically helpful. Be mindful of the fact that while you might be used to seeing bodies all the time, your client, your patient may not be. And so they may be very uncomfortable in whatever situation. Try to be gentle and kind and, just move on along, get the job done. And just try to bring the peace. I think as a global citizen, the world needs peace in general, and we can do a lot to bring peace. So that concludes the story of Pearson, who is baby two. Now I'm going to take you backwards in time a little bit and tell you about baby A, who is my oldest son, who is now 12. So, story with baby A. First of all, let me tell you, I wanted to get pregnant more than anything in the whole world. I had always wanted to be a mother. I got married when I was 29. I love my husband very much. I waited for a very long time to find someone decent to have babies with. My husband was great. And we just weren't having much luck with getting pregnant. Things just weren't really going well. We actually ultimately did get pregnant, obviously. We did that naturally. We didn't do IVF or IUI or anything like that. I actually have a low ovarian reserve. So I didn't have enough eggs for the doctors to be able to do those things. So we just kind of had to make this happen on our own. And we did. So I'm overjoyed when I'm pregnant with my oldest, and everything with that pregnancy was great. No, he was full term. I carried him to 39 and a half weeks. Nothing exciting happened as far as the pregnancy was concerned. But my doctor had asked me early on if I wanted to have genetic testing. And I said yes, because my thought was that if there was something wrong with my child, I wanted to know because I wanted to be able to be the best parent possible and I wanted to be prepared for whatever my little boy or girl needed. And so I had genetic testing and I was literally sitting in a Starbucks and talking to a friend, and my gynecologist called me on the phone. And I answered it because I was like, that's not a good sign. Your gynecologist doesn't normally call you on Friday afternoon on the phone. Like, that's not a social call. So I answered my phone immediately and I was like, hi. And she was like, hey, Paula, what you doing? I'm at Starbucks with a friend. She said, I need you to get in your car and go to maternal fetal medicine now. We're going to have a high definition scan done. And I said, that does not sound good. And she said, well, you've had a genetic marker come back and it's not the worst I've ever seen. Like I've definitely seen worse and things that are definitely a problem, but I need you to go over there and have a high definition ultrasound done. Okay, no problem. So I my husband was actually in the Starbucks as well, so he and I jump in the car, we go over there, he drives. I'm freaking out, right? We get there and I have an amniocentesis and a high definition ultrasound. And what they tell me is that my baby has a complete bilateral cleft lip and palate. And the only reason that I knew what that was from Operation Smile and Smile Train ads that I had seen on television. And I was devastated. And again, wanted this baby more than anything, had done everything I could think of that would be right to bring this little person into the world. And hearing, you know, there's something wrong was awful for me. To be honest with you, if I'm being very raw and real with you, I still carry around a lot of irrational concerns that is my fault. I know up here that it's not my fault and that I didn't do anything to cause that, but getting it to land in your soul and hold it there constantly is a little bit different because truthfully, no one knows what causes cleft palate. So, um, anyway, I wound up carrying my child all the way to term. And I spent those weeks, those 24 weeks of that pregnancy, knowing that he had cleft palate, studying cleft palate. How do I feed this baby? And I consulted with experts. Thank goodness there was an internationally famous cleft palate surgeon who actually lives in Charlotte, where I live right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, in the United States. And we had a surgeon who this is what he does right here. And thankfully, my husband knew him and had actually done surgery with him before. So we were a little bit ahead of other families because we did have that resource. And let me add, I think I'm leaps and bounds ahead of most people because of the fact that I do live with an anesthesia nurse. That's a huge leg up that a lot of families do not have. But we immediately got to Dr. Matthews. He talked to us about the fact that the most important thing is that when my son was born, he was able to eat. Because if he couldn't eat, he was going to have a Mickey button installed, and that would cause an unnecessary surgery possibly when he was really little. And we don't really want to do anesthesia until a child is like 6 months old. So he wanted to protect Pratley's brain from anesthesia. So he really, really wanted us to get this baby to eat. So I will tell you, I spent that 24 weeks studying. Like I was back in college. I know, I feel like I am an expert on cleft palate, not so much on like the medical and the surgical aspects of it, but when it comes to the social emotional welfare of cleft palate children and also the care and maintenance of them as infants, I got you. And so we imported bottles from Japan. We ordered the Haberman bottle and the pigeon bottle. We extensively studied how to feed him. And thankfully, we were successful. He was able to eat. But in all honesty, that was a really rough, and an exhausting period of time in my life because he could not latch to breastfeed. And I wanted him to have breast milk because I wanted him to avoid ear infections and, all the good things about why you should breastfeed. So I would have to pump, which would take about 45 minutes. Then I would have to feed him, which would take about 45 minutes because I'm dropping milk into his mouth. And then I would have about an hour before I had to start that whole process over again. And I usually spend at least 15 minutes of that hour washing the breast pump parts and the bottles. So it was a lot of work on me. And I'm thankful that this was my first child and not one of my subsequent children because I don't think I could have handled that if I had had baby two or baby three at that point. Like, I really had to devote a lot of my life to keeping him alive when he was an infant, but we did it. And since that time, Pratley has had 5 surgeries. He has had his entire upper lip and his nose reconstructed. He has had his velum, and you all are going to be better at this than me, but he had his velum, so the soft palate, he had a huge hole in that after his first surgery that was closed. Before that was done, when we would feed him a solid food, it would just come right out his nose. And so we were able to get that done to aid with his eating. He has had bone taken from his hip and implemented with stem cells and cadaver bone up here because without that procedure, he would not be able to grow teeth in the right location. And he still has teeth that he's not going to be able to grow. He had that in 2 segments when he was 4 years old. He had like one half, and then 6 months later, after this half stabilized, he had the other half. Then he also had a double Z double, which I don't even really remember all of that, but basically they did it in the back of his mouth. He's been in braces since he was 3 years old. So, orthodontia that teenagers get, we started it when he was a preschooler. That was fun. Let me just tell you, like, you haven't lived until you've tried to explain to a 3 year old why he has to get braces on his teeth, like, and watch him come home and cry because it hurts to eat. That was fun. I say fun sarcastically, obviously. Um, I think from all of that, my best story for you guys would be after my son had had the um, hip bone surgery that I just discussed. When he was in there for the first one, the baby I told you about in my first story about preeclampsia, that little boy, Pearson, he's 2 years old now. So he's at home. And by some absolute celestial miracle, I am pregnant with baby three. Baby three was also, third time was the charm, normal, totally uneventful pregnancy. Everything with baby three was fine. But I'm pregnant with baby three, and I have a 2-year-old at home. And then I'm in the hospital with Pratley, who's just had his whole face reconstructed. I am exhausted because I'm pregnant and I've been emotional and up since 5 a.m. at the hospital with my 4-year-old. My 4-year-old is doing great. He's in recovery. He's been moved to a hospital room. He is watching cartoons and doing great, laying in the bed with a stuffed animal, right? He's fine. So my nurse husband says to me, I want you to go home. I want you to go home, take a shower, get yourself a good night's sleep, and take care of Pearson because we have a toddler at home. We need to let the babysitter leave, and you're pregnant. And let us be clear, my husband is probably more competent to take care of my 4-year-old than any of the nurses actively on the unit. He's an anesthesia professional. So I'm like, okay, I feel bad about this, but your logic is sound. I'm going home. So I have my keys and my purse, and I'm walking out of the pediatric unit when this nurse appears out of nowhere, yelling at me, where are you going? And I looked at her and I said, well, I'm going home. And she goes, you can't do that. And I said, what do you mean I can't do that? Why? Like my husband, I'm not leaving my child in the hospital by himself, like he's with his father. And she said, but you're mom, and mom can't leave. And so I told her, I said, I feel guilty enough about leaving. Like, I am not proud of the fact that I am leaving. I do not enjoy the fact that I am leaving. I have a 2-year-old at home. I am pregnant. Somebody needs to stay here and take care of the 4-year-old. And it makes more sense that it's the parent who's an anesthesia nurse, whose dad, who's a great dad and who's very bonded to this baby. It makes more sense that it's him than it's me. If something goes wrong up in here, I'm useless to you. I don't know how to help you. I don't know how to have conversations with you about his care. I don't know how to do anything. So I'm leaving the parent who's the most competent to handle this here, and I'm leaving. And I went out to my car and I cried the whole way home. And I will add, I was pregnant, I was emotional, but that was just not helpful. And so I call my husband when I get home to tell him I'm home and I'm fine and our 2-year-old's fine. And I tell him what happens. And my husband is furious because he's like, that was none of her business. Like we do not need her judgment on how we choose to care for our family. And so there again, be mindful that, like, if you see something that looks like it's unsafe, like if you think someone's completely leaving a child in the hospital with no adult, that's a different conversation. But, you know, don't assume that just because mom is leaving, that that's not the best decision for this family. Like, it was not an easy decision for me to leave. I did not like leaving, but it was absolutely the best decision for our family. Our logic was sound and it was well reasoned. And quite frankly, we didn't owe her an explanation. It was really none of her business. And so I shouldn't have had to do that. So that's my bad tale of caring for the cleft palate situation. So this kind of echoes some of the things that I told you guys with the first story, which is, again, reassurance that, my child doesn't have cleft palate because of anything that I did wrong or anything that I caused. I'm not being punished by God or karma or whatever. This is not a curse. Women need to hear that. And sometimes fathers need to hear that. But we need to hear that, this is not our fault. This is not something that we caused. That's very helpful and healing. The other thing is to just be mindful of what you're seeing, why you're seeing it, and try to be sensitive. One thing that I also think is helpful for physicians some of the time is to just ask mom, was this pregnancy planned? In a calm, non-judgmental tone, because the answer to that question can give you a lot of information. If a pregnancy was planned, as mine were, and very much planned, then that mom really, then what you know is that parent really, really wanted this baby. So the news that there's something not quite right is probably absolutely devastating. And so, how do we help this person feel better? A lot of empowerment, like you are going to be able to raise this child. And Dr. Payne was really good at saying that about Pearson. Like, it's going to be a long road in the NICU. We're not going to lie to you, but 10 years from now, you'll probably never know he was in the NICU. And he was absolutely right. No one at my child's school has any earthly idea that the two of us went through all of that. They have no clue. So sometimes just giving people that information can be very, very helpful. You will be able to do this. You will be fine. Your family will be fine. Your child will have a purpose. Things like that are very helpful. If mom says something like, this was not planned, then that also gives you information. This child might have been something mom really didn't want, and now she's in an even bigger mess. It could be that this baby was the product of some sort of abuse, and then she's got, things are going from bad to worse. So, some of the time, also just reminding a mom, this is not your fault. Like, you're not being punished. There's nothing in the cosmos that is punishing you because you've had a child who's different. In all honesty, I think my craniofacially different child is one of the greatest blessings in my life. He is completely normal, whatever normal means. He's completely healthy in every other respect. He is academically gifted. He reads like a high school kid. He actually is learning how to speak French right now. He's very interested in learning the French language, which I think is amazing considering that he does have cleft palate. But we had to do a lot of work with him on getting his face to where it needed to be. We also had to do a lot of work on him with speech therapy. He had speech therapy for over 8 years. But I think he's fully intelligible at this point, which has been great. But that's the other thing about special needs kids. You sometimes have to empower parents that, like, look, this is going to be more work than the average kid. My first kid was definitely, definitely more work. And there was more money that we had to spend on his needs than my other kids. So I think I've been talking for about 45 minutes or 43 minutes now. I want to see if any of you have any questions. There's absolutely nothing that you can ask that I'm not willing to talk about. I'll tell you anything you want to know. So if you have anything you'd like to know, feel free to ask. No shame. I'm happy to tell you anything you want.
Thank you so much, Paula. You summarized your discussion fully in story format, and I love it that way because a lot of the work our research reporters will be doing um, on advocacy and health literacy, we have a lot of storytelling, listening to storytelling from global citizens trying to relay the information that they have in form of storytelling to also global citizens. So it's a two-way storytelling, and which is each component of the work they will be doing. So, Paula, you discussed extensively, and you are so lucky to have a spouse who is in the field of health. You are an attorney, and beautifully, your career overlaps with mental health. You're also a mental health counselor. Paula, how will you advise your colleagues who are attorneys who don't have spouses who are in the field of health? How will you advise them to approach advocacy in terms of health?
I think there again, just ask questions. Just ask intelligent questions and then see what the answer is. And if you feel like you're not getting an answer that's going to work for you or that's satisfactory to you, keep asking, or if you feel like you're just getting brushed off, then go get a second opinion. There's never anything wrong with getting a second opinion. And I tell clients who come to see me all the time, like, if you don't like what I'm telling you, go ask one of my colleagues. See if there's more than one way to get to the same answer some of the time. I think one of the things that we're seeing in the United States, at least, is a lot of conspiracy theories at this point about things like the measles vaccination, you know? So, some of the time I would also just encourage people not only to ask, but one of the things that I thought was most helpful for me was I did read medical journals, peer-reviewed medical journals, not whatever Dr. Google said or what some girl on TikTok was talking about, which is truly how a lot of people are getting their information is they're just asking Chat GPT. That does not work as a source that is gonna be viable when it comes to your medical needs. And so I truly think the best thing that I did during those 24 weeks when I was growing my firstborn was that I read medical advocacy journals about cleft palate and I read studies and statistics. And I'll be honest, I didn't understand all of it. Like some of it, I was like, oh, when we got into statistics, I'm not real good at math. That's why I'm not a doctor. Like, I'm truly not good at math. And so, whenever some of those things would come up and I didn't know what I was looking at, I could still read the bottom line, right? I could still get to the synopsis and the overall picture. And I was familiar enough with the format of those types of things to be able to understand that. So, I also tell people to read, but read something that is legitimate. Don't just read, the internet. Chat GPT is not a source.
Thank you so much for that, Paula. That's what we're about. We want global citizens who are research reporters who be interacting with to know that we're a credible source of information, health information, to improve their health literacy. In your book, some of I know I put in the profile we said you're an author, and I don't know if anybody joined late. For those who don't know that she's an author, she has a book on health advocacy, on us, on the health scenario she has faced as a mother. But Paula, we have growing majority of the research reporters in this program as of today are from the global south. Some are from global north, but majority are from the global south. They don't know, some of them don't know the health system in the US, how it looks like. So, what role do you feel a patient can play in understanding and relaying the health system of the United States to others?
Oh gosh. So I think that the biggest problem with the United States healthcare system right now is that it is mandated by health insurance companies.
It's not perfect because that's the picture the world sees, that it's the perfect health system.
Well, I will say that I do believe many of our doctors are very well educated, and we truly do
Exactly.
have physicians that are fantastic. I'm with you on
Exactly.
that. The problem that we have is twofold. One is the fact that in order for you to be able to get to that physician and for that physician to be able to treat you, there's all kinds of boxes that they have to check with your health insurance company. And if they don't check those boxes with your health insurance company, it is an access barrier. It can be a problem with you being able to see that physician. The other problem that we have is monopolies. Well, we talk about a monopoly. So my husband works for a system called Atrium Healthcare. And when he started working, Atrium didn't exist. He was working for a small local community hospital called Northeast Medical Center. And it was just a little community hospital that served all the suburbs outside of Charlotte. And it got eaten by Atrium, which is a monopoly. Atrium pretty much owns every hospital in the state of North Carolina now. So if you have a problem with your health insurance or with the hospital serving you, getting those entities to work with you is very hard. Honestly, at this point, the United States is kind of divided into, your upper class individuals, like your wealthy people are going to be able to get health care no matter what because they have plenty of money. They're fine.
Exactly.
Your low income children, at least, usually are okay because many of them qualify for Medicaid. And Medicaid is pretty good about getting you access to really good physicians, but it's the middle class. Um, the middle class really, really suffer. So to give you an example, my son, so we have, health insurance. We had to pay $15,000 out of pocket during 2013 and 2016 for my son's surgeries. That was like our out-of-pocket max deductible. But most families don't have $15,000 laying around and they can't get it. So then they wind up in medical debt that can be absolutely crippling. Like there are US citizens who file for bankruptcy because of medical debt. And I think that that is an offense to global citizenship because, as we said when we started, healthcare should be a human right. We should all be able to get healthcare. Um,
Exactly.
and I don't know what some of the families who can't afford those types of things do other than file for bankruptcy or get crowdfunding or GoFundMe accounts. I know a mother of three right now who has stage 4 breast cancer at like 32 years old. I mean, she is literally probably dying. And she was not insured when they discovered that. And that's not a good situation at all. Like that will bankrupt a family. So it's not so much that we don't have a fabulous healthcare system because we do. It's the fact that your patients cannot access the healthcare system because of money. And I mean, I guess that's, for lack of a better statement, that's one of the downsides of capitalism and living in a capitalistic society.
Thank you so much for that, Paul. I believe our research reporters fully understand your session. I'm optimistic they fully understand your session. And what I want them to see, why I brought on board different speakers, not just from the global south only, but also from the global northeast, because health illiteracy is a global problem from the United States to Germany to Nigeria to Ghana. Health illiteracy is everywhere. And when the COVID-19, the last pandemic happened, the COVID-19 pandemic, it was like an accident which met other accidents on a collapsing bridge, not just in the global south, but also in the global north. Everyone was struggling, every health system was struggling. So there is a lot of work to do. Not that there are no physicians. In countries in the global south, like Nigeria, Ghana, they have reduced doctor-patient ratio. The doctor says so few compare to the patient ratio, putting a lot of weight and of stretching the health personnel. But in countries like the US, we find out that okay, these doctors are there to assess them. It's the problem. Either you don't have the finances to assess them or other factors. So thank you so much, Paula, for sharing your time and expertise with us. Research reporters, do you have any questions to ask our speaker before we move to the next session? Please feel free. Please feel free. No question is too no question is too simple. No question is too hard. Or if you just want to make a contribution, please feel free. Put on your mic and your video if you're comfortable. If you don't put on your video, it's fine. But put on your mic as you speak. Else, let's move to the next session.
I must have done a great job then. That's good.
I'm optimistic. Yes, of course, you've done an excellent job, and I'm optimistic. Our research reporters um
Hello.
give the message. Yeah, thank you so much, Salma.
Hi guys, my name is Salma. I'm from Kenya.
Okay,
I just wanted to give a contribution. It's not really a question.
okay, thank you.
This was a really good perspective to get a perspective from the patient's side because usually when we're having conferences and we're having talks, especially in my country, that's what I can talk about. We usually just get like point of views from the doctors, from health care professionals. It was a bit a change of perspective, Yani, getting the patient side of view. And it's so like different seeing how the patient sees us. See how the way Paula was saying, the way it's like an everyday thing for the doctor, but for her she felt reassured, she felt safe, she felt at home. Yeah, so It was really good getting the patient's perspective for once. So thank you so much, Paula.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you so much, Salma, for that. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons I brought actually Paula on board, because she's not just a health advocate, she also has stories to share with global citizens. So thank you so much, Paula, once again for sharing your expertise with us. Who has any question or contribution before we move to the next session?
All right.
Please ask, because this is the last time I feel you are getting a perspective from a patient or someone outside the field of health. Henceforth, you are getting what are they calling it? Perspective from either the personnel or the researcher or the physician's perspective. Okay, before we move to the next session is with Mr. Roberts. I can't wait to learn from Mr. Roberts. Let's give our research reporters a 3-minute break. We'll be back in 3 minutes time, and it will be 5 p.m. Nigerian time then for us to start. Thank you so much, Paula.
Thank you. It was good to see you again.
Same
Bye-bye.
here. Bye.